Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady. I'm the Reverend Lynn Gardner. She and they pronouns fit well for me. Alongside the Reverend Wendy Bartel, please use Wendy's name rather than a pronoun. We are serving as today's worship associates. And UUSS Board President Robyn Salvin is our worship leader today. She and her pronouns are great for Robyn. We share our pronouns for many reasons. For one, so you'll know that pronouns matter to us because diversity, equity, and inclusion matter to us. We want to help you know that in this place, we strive to create a sense of belonging for those who come seeking an expansive and inclusive religious community. Another reason is to join literally millions of other people, institutions, publications, and organizations who recognize the importance of affirming gender identity as a life-giving practice. At a time when the government is actively seeking to harm transgender people, we instead choose to affirm you. And a third reason is that our anti-racism and anti-oppression work, that is our commitment as a congregation and as a denomination to place love at the center, reminds us that it is okay to name who we are, including our differences. If we were all the same, it would be boring. And if we pretend like we're all the same because we avoid talking about our differences, that can leave a lot of us feeling lonely. So let's do what we can to celebrate who each one of us are and decrease suffering. More love, less loneliness. Share your name, share your pronouns, share your love. If you are visiting us for the first time this morning, whether you're in our Zoom sanctuary or here in the Great Hall, we offer you a sincere welcome. For folks who are in the room who may not know, we have folks who join us on Zoom from all over the continent. We are so grateful for everyone who's here today. I invite you to join me in a time of prayer. By prayer, I mean a time to settle our bodies a bit more fully, to feel the earth below us, to notice what is on our minds and hearts, and to open to that which is larger than any one of us. Let us receive the gift of our next breath. Exhaling to arrive more consciously into this shared moment. Source of compassion, essence of humanity, spirit of life and love. We gather this morning bringing our worries and our hopes, our delights and our grief, our energy, apathy, or overwhelm at all we face. May we be open to the signs that remind us that we are not alone, that we are a small thread in a luminous, interdependent web. May the clear, bright song of a cardinal call us to pay attention. May bright sunflowers remind us that there are reasons for joy, even in the midst of tragedies and loss. May a glimpse of a monarch butterfly help us know deep in our bones that every species deserves the right to migrate. May the news of the day, however heartbreaking, also be a sign, a call for the need for our action to work with others for justice, for peace, and to care for one another. May we know that we ourselves may serve as a sign for others, a sign that kindness matters, a sign that we can connect as human beings, a sign that we need not be silent in the face of injustice, a sign that we are not alone.
I am not an expert in art history. I'm not even a novice. I am an expert in art appreciation, meaning that I enjoy appreciating art, but I'm not trained in it. Growing up, my parents did their best to expose me to art. While I don't necessarily remember the art installations, I do remember going to the Albright Knox Gallery in Buffalo and the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge. I also distinctly remember sitting on a bench in a gallery in the Metropolitan Museum of Modern Art at, I don't know what age, Joan Jett haircut, 10 would be my guess, and falling asleep right there on that bench. I didn't get it. Why was there a giant anchor and chain alone in the middle of the room? There's an enormous canvas with tiny little red lines on it that I could have achieved with a pen and a good ruler. This is art. Needless to say, my palette for modern art wasn't, and honestly still isn't, very refined. I took a pause in any casual art appreciation I might have had through college, law school, and graduate school. But when I was invited as a high school teacher to be a chaperone on student educational trips about 14 years ago, I was once again exposed to the world of art, both in museums and on the street. I've had the privilege of being underwhelmed by Michelangelo's Mona Lisa in France and overwhelmed by Da Vinci's statue of David in Italy. I've enjoyed pre-Incan art in Peru, art inspired by nature in the Galapagos Islands, and reflections on the best and worst of humanity in Vietnam. While I don't think any of my friends would consider themselves art experts, there is something almost intimate about experiencing art with people with whom you share values and interests. A couple of years ago, I went to Iceland and the Netherlands with my best friend from home, Becky. While in Amsterdam, we came across this quirky little art gallery where I was immediately drawn to a painting of a fish riding a bicycle. That's not the actual photo, but it's close. Now, Becky and I had our kids at the same time, and they had the awesome experience of being kids in the era of musician Laurie Berkner. On her 1999 album, Victor Vito, highly recommend, which both Becky and I played for our kids relentlessly, was a song called The Goldfish, Let's Go Swimming, about goldfish doing ungoldfishy things, including brushing their teeth and riding bicycles, inspiring the lyric, "Wait a minute, we're fish. Fish don't ride bicycles." Anyway, Becky and I shared nostalgia and a couple of snort laughs in front of this painting. The experience of sharing that moment with her was really special, and I'm still annoyed I didn't find a way to purchase that painting. I experienced the statue of David on that first school trip back in 2011 with my friend and co-teacher Steve. We had visited the Louvre earlier in the trip and felt pretty meh about the Mona Lisa. Don't come at me, or go ahead, we'll have to talk about it. Um, and spent time in gallery after gallery talking about our favorite pieces of jewelry on display and going deep into why we preferred landscape paintings to portraits. However, when we arrived in Florence and we had time to explore the city on our own during some free time, it was not immediately obvious to us where the statue of David was housed. And so we went on an adventure looking for it. Stereotypically, I kept suggesting we ask for directions, and Steve insisted we'd figure it out. We did. He was right. And as we entered the gallery where the mammoth masterpiece sculpture is displayed, we were both left speechless. We silently circled the statue numerous times, finding new things to be in awe of with every rotation. Words were not necessary for us, or quite frankly, anyone else admiring the sculpture. While our own interpretations of what we were looking at may have been varied, the application of what we were looking at was synchronous. So these stories are pretty typical of how I've experienced museum art. I'm developing an admiration and adoration of street art from places like the Brixton neighborhood of London and from Lisbon, Portugal. But that's for another time because it is the museum itself that plays the central role in my reflection here. Before we get there, though, a note about the signs you see behind me. These are from my classroom, where I teach government and politics, and the aforementioned Steve teaches economics. We share a classroom, to seniors in Niskayuna High School. Every month, Steve and I change the flag that hangs above our desks, set up facing each other, Starchkey and Hutch style, because we are, in fact, hip 70 cops, you see. And the flag usually represents something about that month. Sometimes they're more serious, like this one that hangs in March for Women's History Month. For those of you on Zoom who can't see the whole thing, it's a photo of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the statement, "Women belong in all places where decisions are being made." Amen. Thank you. And sometimes the flags are not as serious, like our house divided flag that displays the symbols of both of our beloved football teams, the Philadelphia Eagles for Steve and the Buffalo Bills for me. We're not cheering for the Bills? What's happening? We hope that these flags create a sense of welcome, inclusiveness, and conversation for our students. The other sign is student made. It says, "People, not profits," and lists the negative aspects of climate change. This one in particular is by Elise Corbin, and Elise was with a student group who was raising money and awareness for environmental issues in what we call crossroads at Niskayuna High School, kind of an intersection that all students go through every day. When they were done with their event, Steve asked if we could display their sign in our classroom, and they graciously agreed. It's a great reminder for our students about climate change, but I also think it can be a symbol of student activism and how powerful it can be. And take just a moment to think about the signs we have here at UUSS and what we are trying to say with them. Our Black Lives Matter sign, our Standing on the Side of Love banner, the symbolism of the rainbow lights over the fountains, the changing messages on the wayward pulpit. They can be very powerful, and it is important that we work collectively to ensure they are not performative. This year's student trip was to the Republic of Ireland, Northern Ireland, and Scotland. I had 4 other teacher chaperones with me to shepherd 34 students through these countries over the course of 10 days. Scotland was our final destination, and we were slated to visit Edinburgh and Inverness and the Scottish Highlands. No, Outlander fans, I did not see Jamie Fraser, but I did touch every rock that looked like it might be a portal to the 1700s just in case. If you haven't watched the Outlander series based on the books by Diana Gabaldon, I highly recommend because plus it's a really interesting show about traveling in time by touching enchanted rocks in Scotland. The bus driver for the Scottish leg of our tour was, how to describe her? She was a tough, tiny Scottish lass with bright purple hair and no patience for inefficiency and some pretty badass moves in a 54-person tour bus on wee Scottish roads. Her name is Jane, and it was her mission to get us to see as much of Scotland as possible. So she single-handedly rearranged our last couple of days in the country to get to be able to visit Glasgow as well. And while I don't think Jane and I would ever hang out together socially, I am eternally grateful to her for getting us to the city, because it was here that I took the opportunity to visit the Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum. As soon as the other chaperones and I started our organized wandering, you get that, right? The organized wandering through the museum, it was apparent to me that those running this Glasgow museum wanted visitors not just to stare at the paintings and other installations for their beauty or artistic interpretations, but to think about what we were seeing and how what we were seeing came to be. One of the first signs I encountered was this one: content warning. Some of the objects displayed contain racist language and images which may cause discomfort and pain. We invite you to sit with this discomfort, confront the realities of racism, and consider how we can tackle racism together. End quote. It was in a display of different forms of art reflecting civil rights, or the lack thereof, of those in marginalized communities throughout history. It caught me unprepared for its unvarnished acknowledgement of how the art may be received and an invitation to reflect on that reception. I especially appreciated the suggestion of action as well. Appreciate, acknowledge, do. Near that sign was this one, describing an installation called Desk by James Bennett from the 1950s. It reads, quote, "Imagine sitting at this desk as a child. You're in a classroom where teaching resources celebrate the British Empire and reinforce racist stereotypes. How would it shape your beliefs?" End quote. It was just a desk, not unsimilar to the 60 student desks that sit in my classroom. But as a government teacher, this nudge from the curators of the Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum hit me particularly hard. It was a reminder to me that when I'm talking about civil rights, advocacy, civil liberties, access to governmental institutions, these are all experienced differently by every student due to their personal stories, especially in today's crumbling democracy. It is my job and it is in my heart to be deliberate in my choice of words and not make assumptions about my students and their families' relationship to the government and governmental policies. And it wasn't just the museum's dedication to directly but gently asking its patrons to have some introspection about what the art was depicting. It also asked us to have some introspection about who has the socioeconomic ability to own art. As such, it was willing to name the more uncomfortable side of art ownership. Take this sign that was posted next to a painting of a street scene. It reads, "Enslavers." In the early 1800s, the Campbells were members of Scotland's social elite. Rich and well-connected, owning several properties, they led an affluent life on their Scottish estate near Peebles in the Borders. The Campbells also owned a sugar plantation in Grenada and 232 Africans whose forced labor and suffering paid for their privileged lifestyle and for this painting. This painting holds a central position in a gallery about Scottish identity, but there are no paintings depicting Black, Asian, and other minoritized people. End quote. The factual nature and straightforwardness of the statement is notable. The act of posting the information is a small act of rebellion. Just, hey, take a minute and think about who has the privilege of being able to purchase and own art and why. Off of whose backs were those fortunes made? And by the way, representation matters. I'll say it again. Representation matters. Kelvingrove doesn't limit its representation to race and ethnicity. Those in the LGBTQ plus community are represented as well. In its tribute to the sculpture Memorial to a Marriage from 2002 by Patricia Cronin, the sculptor writes, quote, "Memorial to a Marriage is a double portrait of my partner, artist Deborah Cass, and me. A double life-sized marble version of the work was installed in our burial plot in Woodlawn Cemetery, New York. The statue addresses issues of lesbian invisibility, gay marriage, love and loss, power, and status. In death, I make official my marriage, which was not legal for most of our relationship. I wanted something that celebrated our life together. If all I would be officially allowed is death, I decided to make the most elegant and dignified statement I could about the end of our life together." In summer of 2001, the New York State Senate passed a bill allowing gay people to marry. After 18 years together, we went to City Hall on the morning of 24 July for this service, which was a step in the right direction. However, it still does not give us full equal rights with heterosexual marriage, which is recognized in states under federal law. End quote. It is worth noting here that this quote is over 10 years old, as is legalized marriage equality. So some of the phrasing and statements about equal rights are also a bit dated. For instance, marriage is marriage, not gay marriage, just marriage. Isn't that kind of the point of equality? Now, please just take a moment to look at how beautiful this sculpture is. The love and talent and anguish it took to make it is clear. The fact that absent the ability to have the work itself, Kelvingrove is displaying a photo and description of the work indicates that recognizing that it exists is important to display. Besides the signs about the art, there was also this sign that I loved. It reads, quote, "Please borrow a stool. They can be used for sitting, drawing, listening to the organ, or just resting weary legs." End quote. Oh, sorry, that was not the end of the quote. "Please return the stools when you've finished. That's important. Do not take them with you." End quote. As a note, there's also a ginormous pipe organ at the end of the museum, and once a day at 1 o'clock, an organist comes out and plays a mini concert for all of the patrons. Super cool. It was a lot of this. Dumbstruck. But back to the sign. First of all, I appreciated that the museum offered the stools at all. But to include just resting weary legs as one of the reasons for the stools is a subtle nod to being more inclusive. Or maybe they just heard that I was coming, knew of my checkered past at MoMA, and thought I might need a place to take a nap. All of these signs were completely unexpected. I did not anticipate visiting a museum in Glasgow and having the signs beside the art having as much of an impact on me as the art itself. They reminded me to look beyond the work and think about the artist, the owners of art, and the perspective of the subjects of the art. It also made me think about the decision by the curators or perhaps the board of the museum to include such signs. They recognized the importance of providing a more full picture of the works of art they are displaying. There was an understanding that posting these signs would make those visiting the museum feel more welcome and included. They likely also knew that it may challenge some people, and they were okay with that. Perhaps they were uninterested in providing incomplete information in order to make people more comfortable. Over the last week and a half, your Board of Trustees has been meeting to prepare for the coming church year. We created a covenant, open questions, an annual focus of ministry. We've discussed our role in governance, brainstormed ideas for ways to structure and celebrate the congregation's 125th anniversary, shared food and laughs, and yes, talked about the looming deficit we are facing. In all of these discussions, we thought about the same things that the board of the Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum likely thought about. What part can we play in making this place the most welcoming, authentic, and thought-provoking place we can? How can we challenge and engage all who come here and participate while also providing care and room to grow? As president of the board, I can tell you that we continue to work to fulfill that vision. And knowing that every member of the board, including our ministers, love this place dearly and are dedicated to this work, I am confident that we will work diligently to continue to make the Unitarian Universalist Society of Schenectady a welcoming, sustainable, and thoughtful congregation. Let me share one final sign that I saw at the museum. I'm going to describe it rather than show it, as it's really hard to see the words on the sign. It's a large, irregularly shaped slab of white marble, probably just maybe a little smaller than that screen. And etched into it is a short poem by Ian Hamilton Finley. It reads, "Clay the life, plaster the death, marble the revolution." Considering what is happening in our country right now, I feel like this poem is particularly poignant. Clay the life, plaster the death, marble the revolution. Marble the revolution. My interpretation of this is that we marble the revolution so that the reasons for the revolution, the scars it leaves behind, the victories it creates, is so those things don't get erased, so that others can learn the lessons from those who came before. We need to heed these lessons. We need to get energized, get educated, and be effective in our contributions to the revolution. And as we strive to do this, I hope you will also use the lessons from the Kelvingrove Art Gallery and Museum, and to look for signs that inspire you, signs that make you uncomfortable, signs that simply delight you everywhere you go, even in the most unlikely places.